So when he created Adam, Adam was lifeless, and he had to do something different to Adam than he did to everything else. What was it he did? Breathed into him, and he became a living thing. Okay, so then God gave him all kinds of instructions of what to do in the garden. He told him about the 2 trees, and then he told him about that he had to name all the animals and all those kind of things. And so Adam went to do all those jobs, and while he was out there, he noticed something. And so he comes back to God and he says, hey, you know, God, I noticed that every other type of animal has someone like them, but I have no one. So God's like, glad you asked that. I've been waiting for you to ask that. See, because if God had just created Eve on his own, then Adam could have blamed her for everything. Of course he did, but that's okay. They're just joking. We only have one guy in here, so I'm sorry, Alex. So anyway, so God had Adam fall into a deep sleep. Now, if you have problem watching scary, gory things, you should probably not watch this, because this is not pretty. And keeping in mind that I don't do this, really, I'm not God, in case that slipped your mind at any point in time. But anyway, so he took one rib out of Adam. He did not add anything to Eve. He just took part of Adam. So he took half the DNA and all those kind of things to make Eve. He didn't add anything to her. So even now, science is, with everybody getting DNA tests done, they're able to go backwards to pinpoint the very first DNA. And they're doing that. And you can see stuff like that on Google, because now you don't have to take my word for it. Okay, so God brought the woman to him, and he said, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. Kind of another way to say, ooh la la, wow. Because, you know, this was the first woman formed completely by God and the first man, so this was pretty powerful hot couple, right? Okay, so now Adam's job was to teach Eve everything, because keeping in mind, God told Adam everything before. Oops, I forgot something. Don't look. Okay, so God told Adam everything before Eve was created. So then there's that powerful story in the garden where the snake, who did not come out of Adam's foot, but that's what just happened. The snake came up and was tempting Eve, saying, hey, that's pretty good fruit. And she's like, yeah, it's pretty. And he says, well, so why don't you have some? And she goes, no, God told us not to eat of it or to touch it. Now, did God tell Adam not to touch it or just not to eat it? Right, so already there's something weird going on, some kind of like problem. So Satan goes, ooh, that's really good. Actually, Satan also had, at that point, he had legs. Sorry. So he's a serpent. So he got her. He said, okay, touch it, you know, like, you know, and she touched it and nothing happened. Okay. So she said, well, you know, the reason God doesn't want you to take that is because you would be like him. Keeping in mind, God created us in his image and likeness, right? So can we truly be in his complete likeness? And we can be in his image because they're physical bodies, but can we be in his likeness if we don't know the difference between good and bad? Because does God know the difference between good and bad? He created it, he knows. He created good, and then the opposite is bad. So they had no idea what they were doing. So anyway, a lot of people think that Eve ate the fruit. Of course, she ate the fruit. Nothing happened when Eve ate the fruit. And then she gave it to Adam, who was right there. And a lot of times you hear stories where, okay, Adam, where are you? I have some fruit for you to try. Let me trick you into eating it. That's not what happened. Adam was sitting there with his mouth shut, never said anything, never stomped on that snake, which he should have, and said, get out of there. Eve, no, God said no. No, Adam said none of that, okay? So, he was a passive male, right? We have to understand that he missed a point here. Not to say that Eve didn't, but see, you know, Eve was already confused, thought she couldn't touch it. So, Eve, anyway. Poor girl. Poor girl, So anyway, we know they ate the fruit, and God came in and said, where are you, Adam? Because, of course, they had sewed leaves together and were hiding in the bushes. Again, we talked about the leaves. The leaves that they were putting on his clothing, because, the first thing that they noticed was what?
Naked.
But does naked mean without clothing? Because there was no clothes up to this point. Nobody in the whole garden wore clothes. So why did they feel the need to? There was also some animals with no fur. So literally that's not the translation of that. The translation is they realized that they had screwed up and they needed to hide because they had no covering. Okay, they weren't protected. They realized, oops. So they were trying to cover themselves so they could camouflage in the bushes, because that's what leaves would do, right? Okay, so, just looking at the Bible that way makes it a lot more sense to me. So God says, Adam, where are you? Of course, God knew where he was again, And so Adam says, well, we, hid because we had eaten the fruit. And he, so anyway, that whole thing happened, and God said, well, you're going to have a lot of hard work, and you are going to have pain in childbearing. And he didn't really just mean childbirth. The worst part is when you guys are teenagers and we have to deal with that. That's the most heart-wrenching part of being a parent, a mom specifically, okay? When they're little and in their crib, no problem. They wake you up in the middle of the night, no problem. You think that's hard until you have a teenager and you're woken up in the middle of the night with whatever. So anyway, so they were thrown out of the garden, and the serpent was made to have no legs, and they were thrown into the miry pit, which is where our story begins. Okay, so he lifted me from the miry pit and set my foot upon a rock. That is actually a reference to a potter's wheel. I have already wedged this, by the way. Oh, and I should show you how to do this. I'm going to go back and forth between spiritual and teaching you. First of all, this is what we call a bat, and there's the bat cave over there where they go. Can you see where the bat cave is? So please don't ask me where the bats are. I've just told you. On the back of the bat, there are two series of holes. One of them close to the edge, one of them not close to the edge. You're going to choose the two that are close to the edge. Those are the ones that fit my wheels. You're then going to put them over these two little things, bolts, I guess, nuts or whatever. And the only way to you can't look at it because there's this lip here, okay? So don't try to look at it. You're going to take it and you're going to feel where the nut is, and you're going to put one over first, and then you'll feel the other one and put it over there. So you got it on there, right? Simple? This is apparently the hardest part for some people. I don't know. So he lifted me from the miry pit and he set my foot upon a rock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to... No, that didn't work. No, I'm not going to do that either. What I'm going to do is just kind of right here, I'm going to take it and I'm going to... Did my hand ever leave the lump of clay? No. It's still there, okay? And also now you can see my little fingerprints right there because I literally popped it on there. Now, that part was called throwing. I have no idea why I didn't name it that, but that's what that's called. The whole thing is called throwing, and I really don't understand necessarily why. I think it's because when a professional will throw it and get it on there and whatever. So, but we're going to start from the beginning. Okay, so now that we're on the center of the wheel, when we were in the miry pit, all we could see was the light up above, because a miry pit is a big deep hole with slippery sides, and you can't get out of it by yourself. You have to have a friend, and this is actually a real miry pit. There's that's where the clay came from. I mean, it came from the store, but before that it came from the miry pit. And so the only way to get out is for you to have a friend help you, lift you out, throw you a rope, whatever. So that's the reference, is that he lifted me from the miry pit. He's my friend. He took care of me, got me out of that place, and now he's put me on a secure place. The rock, of course, physically is talking about a potter's wheel. They used to have two rocks, one at the top and one at the bottom. And the bottom one they would kick, they actually did it standing up, they would kick the bottom one to make the top one go. And so potters had very strong muscles in one leg and not the other particularly. They would walk in circles sometimes and people would know exactly who they were. Just kidding, that was a joke. So anyway, the rock, of course, spiritually speaking, is the rock of Jesus Christ. He's the secure foundation, okay? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my wheel full speed, because even though it's sort of in the center, I did pretty well, it's not centered. You can see if you look at it that fast, you can see it kind of bumping around. At some point, if it's centered perfectly, it won't look like it's even moving. Okay, so over here I have the water. We've talked about water being the Word of God. In the Bible, it talks about washing of the Word. So I'm going to always put water on my clay before I touch it, because of the friction. Otherwise, I'll just knock it off the wheel and make it into a weird thing, and it's not going to work. So we have lots of different positions, and over on the wall over here, when you start to throw, each person's going to sign up for a day, this week, next week. When you start to throw, you're going to need to read that. So before we get started, while I'm doing roll, you're going to get the bat, you're going to get your clay from me, and you're going to wedge it. I didn't tell you I wedged it, but I did wedge it. It's extremely important that you wedge, even if it's new clay. And then you're going to read, okay? You're going to do all of that without me having to tell you, please. Okay, so the first stage, stage 1, your left elbow has to be in your hip bone. The reason for this is if my clay is acting like that, it can do whatever it wants with my hand, and I have to be in charge. I'm the potter, this is the clay. If the clay wins, it's not going to be what it should be. It's going to be a mess. So we can't let the clay win. So if the clay can move me, then it can win. If the clay can't move me, I'm way bigger than it. And if it's trying to push my whole body, it's not going to do it. So I'm going to make sure my left elbow is in my left hip bone. My right elbow is just going to be on my knee. So, and then you want to get your eyes directly above. So you might have to move up. You might, depending on what size your body is, what size everything is. You're going to be a little different than me. The other thing is, the part of our hand, this is not the part of our hand that touches our clay. It's the heel of the hand, like this. Okay? You're going to keep it straight, but it's the heel of the hand. So if I have to move all the way here to get that heel to be in the middle, then do so, because this part's soft and it's not going to make a straight side. So what we're going to try to do is make a template with our hands so that the clay will look similar to this. Flat on the top, kind of tapered on the sides. That one. Okay? So I'm going to put a little bit of water on here. I'm going to push in with my left hand. Now, if I just do that, you see how it's bumping around? That's going to stop. But this could fly off. So this hand has to keep it from flying off. So to do that and to make the top flat, I'm going to kind of karate chop it right over the top, right like this. Now that's fine, except for now the clay can work against me. Divide and conquer, I'm sure none of you guys ever done this, but it's like when you ask your mom something and she says no, so you ask your dad, or you ask your dad and you say, well, mom says yes, and you work them against each other. That never works. Maybe temporarily, but it never works. So it's not good to, because then your parents fight about it and it's your fault, so please don't do that. So anyway, what I'm going to do to avoid that is I'm going to take this hand, I'm just going to flop it over. Now, I'm not doing this, okay? So look over and I see people doing this. I don't know what that is. I'm doing this, okay? So it's kind of like a little bit of a triangle, which is what I'm making here with my body, a triangle, which symbolizes the Trinity, okay? God and the Holy Spirit never argue. Jesus never argues with the Holy Spirit, and none of them ever argue. They're because they're one. They're not going to argue with themselves, unless they're not like schizophrenic. They're not going to do that. So they're always in unity, not like your parents, which you can divide and conquer because they're two different people. Okay? Now, I'm going to put water on it because I've been talking too much. I'm going to push in with my left hand, down with my right hand, and I'm going to, using this muscle back here on both hands, really pinch in. Okay? If I don't, I'm just riding the clay like a horse. No, it's not going to work. So I'm going to do it again because I've been talking again. And I'm going to push in. And as you can see, it's bumping less, right? Now I want to show you something right now. This shape right here. I like to say, in the fall I call it a candy corn because that's one of the candies that's out in candy corn. But it's also a guitar pick, so you choose whichever one you want. If you're sweet tooth or music freak, you can do either one. All right, so you can see that it's got the shape kind of, but it's still not quite centered. So this time I can't do this while I'm talking, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a lot of muscle into it. You're not going to have this much clay, but it's going to look very similar, okay? So I'm going to do this. I'm going to stop talking. And my hands are almost stopped. Now, you're going to have a little bit of a problem there if you don't push down. Take your crescent tool, go into your stabilizing position, which is again your Trinity. Take this clay and put it back up. If you don't put the clay back up on the lump, your clay is going to be smaller, which means your pot will be smaller. Okay, last time. Okay, now you see how I'm not moving at all? Can't even see my hands move. I'm going to slowly take my hands up. If I do it fast, it's going to be like the Pillsbury Doughboy, and then it's going to be off-centered again. Okay, so I'm going to do this one more time. This is kind of like a little cheat, actually. Stabilizing position, I almost cheated there. And then I'm going to wash my hands off, not because I care about how dirty my hands are, but because that way I can keep showing you the candy corn or the guitar pick. Okay, that was stage 1. That's it. Now stage 2, I'm still at full speed. I'm going to open the pot, okay? This pot is just a gray lump of clay. It needs a heart, okay? Everything that God creates, every person that God creates starts with a heart. The heartbeat, they have found, starts very early. Back when I was young, we didn't think the heartbeat started very early. We didn't have technology. Now we know that the fetus is very, very formed, very young, and the heartbeat is detectable almost immediately from conception. So, not immediately, very closely after. So I'm going to put a little bit of water on the top. I'm going to put both my elbows on my knees just like this. I'm going to put my left hand over my right hand, and I'm going to just kind of rest it. You know, you all know what a record player is? Okay. This is like a record, this is like the needle, it kind of goes off to the side. And so it's flat. I'm not doing this, okay? If you do this, then you're gonna have a weird thing happen, which we can fix, but don't do it, it's just... So I'm gonna push down with this hand, because this way, my clay is not in charge. I am. So I'm gonna put a little bit of water on here. I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna bend the tip of my finger, and because I'm pushing on it, I'll see, I'm pushing on this to keep it flat, but I'm still going down with just the tip of my finger. Okay? Now I'm going to kind of go down looking at it until I'm about 1/4 of an inch from the bottom, and that's about it. Now, Eve, can you see to the bottom of that hole?
From here?
Yeah.
No.
No. So you can't truly see the heart of my vessel. What would you have to do to see the heart of my vessel? I could take a picture and show it to you, but other than that, how would you do it?
Stand up.
Yep. So do it.
Oh.
Now can you see the heart of my vessel?
Yeah.
So you had to get closer to me to see the heart of my vessel. Okay, so in the Word, it's man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks on the heart. So if you want to get to know a person, you get closer to God, and you'll see those people the way God sees them. And guys, we're all struggling. We're all imperfect. If you think that someone's weird, they think that you're weird, because we're all weird, right? And the older you get, it just doesn't matter anymore. All right, so now, even though there's a heart in that, it needs to be bigger, because there's like nothing I mean, that's not even going to be like enough for a medication if I want to take medication out of that, you know what I mean, like a little tablespoon, right? So we're going to open that. This is actually one of the fun parts. Huh?
You put one pencil.
One pencil? I could do that. I could. But it's going to blow up because it's too thick. So I'm going to put water in the hole. And then, again, I'm still at full speed. I'm going to go back into a similar position, and I'm going to put my pirate hook right here. Arg, matey, right there. It's not like this, it's like this. And you notice my claw's out too. It's not like this. It's like this. Because if you put it like this, sometimes your knuckles are going to hit. So I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to pull out to my right elbow. So pushing down, and I'm in my Trinity, and I'm keeping my pirate hook straight. I'm keeping it like this. I'm not letting it open up, otherwise I'll have slippery slopes on the side. I don't want that. And there we go. Now it's quite big. And I kind of went up the side to make it straight, because what I want is a flat bottom and straight sides. I don't want this, okay, because then it's too thick. Okay, so the last thing on stage 2 I'm going to do is take my thumb, and I'm going to press it on the bottom of the pot, and this is called compression. This is keeping, just kind of putting the molecules closer together and keeping it from cracking. If you get a crack in your pot, it's because you didn't do that. Okay, and then making sure it's 90 degrees, which it is. Now I'm going to slow it down, because now we're at the 3rd stage. The final stage is 4, and that's like basically just taking it off the pot, off the bat. So now we're at the lifting stage. Okay, so the lifting stage has a couple of elements. Number 1, you're going to, in your Trinity right here, with your crescent, now I'm not doing this anymore, I'm doing it this way. I'm going to gouge out some in the bottom. This is called a lifting shelf. So this gives me a place to pull from. Okay, now I am going to be in a position right around 5 o'clock, 5:30 if this was an analog clock, and some of y'all know can't tell time anymore, but you're going to have to remember it, okay? Because if you do it up here, then the clay can take your hands, pull them around here, and then gouge it right in there, and then you're done. It's a done deal. It's back in the miry pit for the pot, okay? So I'm going to do with both, well, my left hand is on my thigh again, and I'm going to have a pincher just like this, these pinchers. These fingers are out, they're not in, they're out. So I'm going to pinch right around 5:30. This elbow is going to be in this hip bone, kind of similar to stage 1. So I have to move around, because if I'm here, I'm going to be tempted to be over here, but if it's down here, I have no choice. So I'm going to pinch here, and then this hand, these 2 fingers are together, both of them are touching the pot. It's not like this. Both of them are touching the pot. And then my thumb is going to be stabilizing over here, so I'm in my Trinity. Okay? And then I'm going to put a little bit of water. I'm going to pinch at the bottom. And I'm going to take my driving finger, which is this one, and now I've got it wetted again because I started talking. I'm going to take my driving finger and I'm going to push up the side of the pot. Now for 3 of them, you're going to have what we call pruning coming off, which is a little bit of that clay that came off. When that happens, you just scrape it back into the bucket. Okay, so when you get to the top, you're going to take your driver and you're going to go across the bridge and connect your 2 pinching fingers to make the top flat. This is where we're going. This was the end of stage 2, by the way. So we're trying to get to this, which is going to be, mine's going to be a little bit bigger than that because I have more clay. All right, so now I'm going to go do lifting shelf, water, pinch and drive up the side of the pot. I'm going to do this 3 times pretty slow. I'm not going to put too much pressure on it the first 3 while this pinching thing occurs. When I get to the top, I'm going to bridge across. That was number 2. Look at all that pruning I got. Sometimes people get freaked out when that clay starts coming off and then they do something and then it knocks it off center. Okay, lifting shelf, water, pinching slowly up the side of the pot, keeping a very even pinch if I possibly can. There's one place that I did not get, so I'll have to get it next time. And then bridge. Okay, now I'm going to go a little bit more aggressively because I hope I don't have any more pruning. I might. Stabilizing, lifting shelf, water, a little bit more pruning. There's that place I missed. Maybe I can get it back on the pot. Let's see if I can get it back on the pot. Oh, nope, it came off. Okay, saw a little bit more movement then. Okay, see that little thing that's there, a little defection, so we say? I'm gonna get in my stabilizing position and I'm gonna go like this. I'm not gonna try to grab it or any other weird thing, touch it, because that's when you mess up. Okay, so I'm gonna do this a few more times. Lifting shelf, getting this clay all over myself. Lifting shelf, water, bridge. There's only a tiny bit of pruning that happened that time. It's fun to watch, isn't it? Now, it actually takes about the same amount of time to throw a little pot. When you got these professionals on there, you can get on YouTube and watch them throw up a big, huge pot in 2 seconds. That's, of course, they do that all day long.
Can you do that?
When I'm alone, I can, but not when I'm being watched, because, like, you know when you're driving down the road and you see something to the side of the road, most of you drive, right? See something on the side of the road and you look at it, where does your car go? Towards it. So when I'm talking to people and when you have a big pot, you can't look up because you're going off. And I don't do it every single time. All right, so getting close to the
So you can't do this part at full speed though, right?
this part at full speed. The problem is when you're driving fast, you can't concentrate and make corrections fast enough. A professional probably could, but everyone I've seen, they slow it down. It's also a peaceful thing. You know, this part is really peaceful. When you get to this place, it's like just me and the pot, and you know. Notice my thumb keeps going back where it's supposed to go. If you forget your thumb, then you have every opportunity to kill this pot.
Nice.
Because it will divide and conquer. Okay, so we're getting up there. I think I'm getting very close to showing you how to make a shape, and you probably won't do this with your first pot, but I'll show you how to do it. I'm going to switch to, since I have more clay, I'm going to switch to what we call a knuckle pull. Okay, instead of doing this, I'm going to extend my finger by using my knuckle. I like this personally because it gives me more control when you start getting taller, but you have to because you can't reach the bottom of the pot anymore. gonna take the water out of the inside. I'm gonna squeeze out my sponge in my stabilizing position. I'm gonna go down, kind of squeeze my sponge in half, and I'm gonna suck the water out because you don't have to do this often, but after a while it starts to dissolve the bottom of the pot, so you don't want that too long. Okay, so I'll do it one more time. It's very critical, don't let the clay grab you and move you, because now your clay is getting pretty thin. Okay, now I'm gonna kind of bow it out a little bit at the bottom. I'm gonna make one more lifting shelf. This is probably my last pull, I'm thinking. If I'm gonna do any more on it, I'll do it while you're not watching, because it gets kind of scary. So I'm gonna push out with my fingers at the bottom while I'm still holding the outside. There's a little air bubble in there, I just felt it. And then I'm gonna go back in and pull this part out. Okay, so you saw a little bit of change, right? Oh, I lied, I'm gonna do another lifting shelf. Okay, and then I'm gonna do that same thing, but this time I'll do a little bit more. Oops, I almost slipped there. Did you see me? You don't want to slip. And there she is. Okay, so now I'm going to squeeze, for real, take the water out, because now I'm going to be finished. Don't leave water in there. All right, and I'm going to do something a little different with the lifting shelf. It's no longer a lifting shelf. Now I just want to taper the bottom. So I'm going to do what we did before. This time, I'm going to go a little deeper and I'm going to scrape up because I want the bottom to go like this. I don't like the bottom the way it was. Now, if you're doing a huge pot, we call this removing the foot, and you would take it and you would cut off and the whole piece would come off, but we're not going to do it that way for a little bitty pot. And for the most part, I've thinned out the bottom pretty much, so, right? And if you wanted to, you could do designs in there. You can do some things like this if you want to. If you don't want to do something like that, you decide to change your mind. Again, I'm not going back in the inside of the pot. I'm just kind of doing the outside. I can fix that. Okay, so when you're ready, when you're finished, you're going to stop it. You're going to take some mud and you're going to write your initials in the mud. And then you're going to take the bat off. Now the bat, I'm going to show you how the right way to take off the bat, and most of you are going to forget this, but hopefully not. If you take both pieces off and one comes off aggressively and it shakes, you might implode your pot. So what you do is you hold one side, you find where it is, find one that comes up easy. Like that one came up pretty easy. You saw how it even jiggled a little bit? If you try to do both, the jiggling is immense. So I took off one side and I'm just going to pull it very calmly over to the other side. And I'm going to pick it up. See how smooth that was? It's okay, baby, everything's fine. Okay, so I'm going to put it on the shelf, and then the next day when I come in, if I did it right and the bottom's not too thick, it's no longer going to be on the bat, and so that I can take it over to the sink and I can clean off the bottom. When you get to 3 or 4 AP, if you want to, there's a way to turn it over on top of the bat and hold it with little pieces of clay and do what we call trimming the bottom. That's also very satisfying to do and to watch. So YouTube, trimming the bottom of a pot, that's really cool if you ever want to, like, really bored and you want to look at something. Very fun. Okay, so that's it.
So you don't take it off